Hello, and welcome to the course of Syllabus Design, Lesson 2. Sources for Syllabus Design. In the previous video, we exposed some definitions of syllabus. This lesson will try to situate the discipline of syllabus design in relation to other fields. As suggested in the previous lesson, the concept of syllabus is relatively subjective, and therefore open to interpretation. However, it is always possible to come up to a consensus on the most appropriate idea for syllabus design and its use in the classroom. Hence, syllabus design can be defined as the selection and organization of instructional content into manageable units for teaching purposes. It also includes suggested strategies for the course implementation and the evaluation of learning outcomes. If the syllabus serves as a record of classroom procedure, then it may lead to a better planned curriculum. We must clarify here that this meaning is relatively recent, and it was not used until a few decades ago. Nobody in the past thought that teaching a language required as much of effort and time for designing appropriate syllabi and curricula. The humanities revolution at the beginning of the 20th century profoundly changed the scientists' views of the nature of language, the nature of learning, and the nature of the learner. Therefore, the field of syllabus design is directly tied to language education and applied linguistics, which in turn feed on the theory and research from other sciences. Firstly, syllabus design and teaching methodology. In a way, syllabus design can be considered as a practical translation of teaching approaches into organized units of learning. Moreover, syllabus design is the substance for educational reforms. When teaching methods change, the syllabus changes as well, and vice versa. Over the years in the 20th century, we have seen the rise and fall of many approaches to language teaching, swaying from grammar translation to audiolingual drills, then to a communicative method, and finally to post-method language pedagogy. As the field of language teaching expanded, it was then realized that it needed to have its own body of theory, less dependent on linguistics and psychology. This separation led to a more flexible attitude to language teaching approaches and methods, and resulted in an increased interest in the learning teaching contexts and individual learners. It became that clear that teacher could use various combinations of techniques for given objectives, types of learners, and in specified learning situations. Research ultimately concluded that there is no one best method for language teaching, and therefore it has focused attention on syllabus development as a means of overcoming the problem. Secondly, syllabus design and applied linguistics. Major branches of applied linguistics include multilingualism, contrastive linguistics, sign linguistics, discourse analysis, language planning and policy, pragmatics, and translation. Theories of language and second language acquisition focused on the issues involved in designing languages programs and textbooks. Research attempted to answer fundamental questions, such as: how is language acquired in social contexts? What differences exist between the first and second language learning? For example, Cook claimed that curriculum and materials development have to be developed around the portraits of L2 users, rather than those of native speakers, at least for beginners. Ellis's research on second language acquisition concluded that tasks are an effective and eligible device to promote consciousness raising and noticing of target grammar rules. However, Ellis's theory was criticized by other researchers. For instance, Lightbone and Spada argued that there is a little resemblance between acquisition sequences and instructional sequences, based on linguistic forms. 4. Learning is non-linear and cumulative, described as U-shaped behavior, rather than linear and additive. Likewise, Penman highlighted on the influence of learnability on the order of items to be learnt. Also, Long point out that linguistic grading, simplification of texts, results in artificiality, which prohibits exposure to authentic language, which learners may be ready to learn. To add, other issues which received attention in applied linguistics research, related to the distinction between linguistic versus extralinguistic knowledge on the one hand, and linguistic versus metalinguistic knowledge on the other, and how this can be used in language pedagogy. For example, many researchers such as Sherwood Smith and Truscott, Long, Skin, and Robinson argue that systematic categorization of items, given the complexity of language, remains useful for teaching and learning only if these items are related and meaning-oriented. So, as these examples prove, applied linguistics research can be used in curriculum development, syllabus design and materials preparation. But surprisingly, as Tomlinson and Cook observe, the impacts of this research on coursebooks is hard to find. Perhaps because they are not readily visible, or maybe because they are just not there. To wrap up, applied linguistics is an interdisciplinary field which identifies, investigates, and offers solutions to language-related real-life problems. In trying to solve those practical problems, applied linguistics draws on other academic fields such as education, psychology, communication research, anthropology, and sociology. We will now see how these fields may also impact syllabus design. Thirdly, society, politics and the syllabus. As we have seen above, different theories of applied linguistics inform different foreign language approaches and methods, which are at the basis of curricula and syllabi, which in turn lead to different courses, materials and activities in the classroom. However, there are also other essential factors that are to be taken into account when planning foreign language syllabi. I mean here those factors relating to the wider educational and social context in which FL teaching and learning takes place. Policy and decision-making about what is to be taught and learned in schools, and perhaps how, may be done on a national level, which means that there is a national curriculum, or on a local curriculum, limiting therefore options for teachers to create their own syllabi. Just as language operates within a social context, used for the expression of social meanings, in the same way, language teaching and learning cannot be separated from the general political, educational, and social environment in which it takes place. The next figure shows the hierarchical nature of these factors and their interrelationship. Fifth, educational psychology and syllabus design. Both pedagogy and andragogy can offer some guidance in the selection of course objectives, in the sense that knowledge of child development and adult learning, and of what and how they can learn, might indicate whether the objectives are realistic and appropriate for the students for whom they are intended. Also, findings on motivation, memory, cognition, etc. have contributed to the knowledge of when learners can learn best a certain knowledge, under certain conditions. Moreover, studies in group dynamics, interaction between teacher and learner, development of personality, attention, the role of interest, and span of concentration contributed one way or another to the development of new methods, techniques, activities, new groupings etc. Sixth, sociology of education and syllabus design. The sociology of education is the study of how public institutions and individual experiences affect, and are affected, by education and its outcomes. it is mostly concerned with the public schooling systems of modern societies at all levels. Hence, the study of social needs, traits, and aspirations of learners can suggest which syllabus objectives and content would enable them to improve their potential. 7th, History of Education and Syllabus Design. History of education is concerned with the analysis of past practices in the field of education in order to sort out what educational theories existed, how they were developed and why. It enables syllabus designers to appreciate the importance of education to mankind, across the generations, and to acknowledge the role education plays in the transformation of society. Teachers can draw practical lessons from the past, avoid possible mistakes, and initiate more viable plans for the benefit of society. By reviewing the reasons behind the success and failure of certain theories in particular times, syllabus designers will be able to better judge the promise of new theories. A skilled teacher may even use some things from discarded methods to synthesize a personal style for modern times. Last but not least, philosophy of education and syllabus design. When teachers are devising methods in syllabi, they need to ask themselves questions about the nature of knowledge and what education they have to teach. Philosophy of education involves thinking about these questions, and others, such as: what should the aim of education be? Who should be educated? What should be taught, and should this differ with interests and abilities? How should we be educated? Therefore, philosophy of education enables teachers to understand better the conceptual debates that involve the subjects that they are teaching. Specifically, philosophy of education benefits syllabus designers because it encourages them to grow independent thinking and self-sufficiency. By doing that, they will look at schools and communities as part of a holistic system. In conclusion, and in regard to what has been said, it becomes clear that the instructional design process has significant differences at 3 levels: syllabus design, course design, and activity design. At the heart of all 3 are learning outcomes and the means to help students achieve and evaluate these outcomes. Courses include multiple activities to address a set of learning outcomes. These are derived from the long-term behaviors determined in the syllabus design process. Learning activities, or learning objects, are the smallest unit of instructional design and target singular learning outcomes. These units generally form together a textbook, which quality may need evaluation after it has been implemented, to spot any deficiencies. Therefore, syllabus design, then, includes the identification of long-term behaviors that are reflected in learning outcomes in the course design. It involves the sequencing of the learning activities within the course to support student learning and enable a course assessment and evaluation structure. The course learning outcomes, in turn, determine the content, methodologies, and activities of the course and are assessed with measures that can be compared to performance criteria. So, this lesson summarized the influence of the humanities on syllabus design. The next lesson will deal with the components and functions of a syllabus.